Kafka. She exerts big, mommy energy. She is also a game changer for dot teams. Dot usually stands for damage over time, but since Star Rail is turn-based, we can call it damage over turns, which is still the same acronym, so dot it is. Anyways, Kafka is the core for any dot-focused team. Her kit activates all the dots on enemies without spending said dots. So the more dots on the enemy, the more bonus damage she does. Her skill hits 3 targets, but more importantly, pops all the dots on them without consuming it. Her ultimate hits all enemies, applies shock, and pops the shock damage right away. When you get her Ascension 2, the ult pops all dots on the enemy, not just shock. So think of it as a much stronger version of her skill. But to benefit from the bonus damage, she needs a proper team, so let's dive into that. Currently, there are 3 units that can reliably put dots on enemies. There are Sampo, Luca, and Servo. Servo and Kafka both apply shock, so having both on the same team can be redundant unless the enemy is weak to lightning. Then double dip and abuse the bonus damage. For most other fights, your team would be 1. Kafka, 2. A tank or healer, 3. An offensive support like Silverwolf or Pela, and 4. A dot assist like Sampo or Luca. So who do we pick? It's actually pretty simple. One team is better for multi-target, while another crushes bosses. Sampo and Pela are the go-to when fighting 3 targets or more, and the Silverwolf combo is ideal for single target bosses. Both Pela and Silverwolf reduces enemy defense, but Silverwolf's debuffs are much stronger. She reduces more defense than Pela, but can also reduce speed and attack. But they only affect one enemy. Meanwhile, Pela's ult drops everyone's defense, but to a lesser degree. If we look at Sampo, his skill hits 5 times to random targets, while Luca's skill only hits 1 target. This means Sampo is better at applying dots in multiple enemies, even though it's only a 65% base chance to apply. But this multi-hit also means Sampo does pretty well on single target bosses too. On the other hand, Luca's skill only puts bleed on 1 target, but it has a 100% chance to do so. Luca also does more personal damage than Sampo, so he is ideal against bosses, especially if the boss is not weak against wind. And the flex support spot? Pick a healer or maybe someone that can sustain in the near future, right? So here's the general team recommendations for Kafka in single and multi-target situations. And if you want faster daily farming, then go with 2 dot supports and leave out the debuffer. Now on to her build. Since dots cannot crit, and a good chunk of her damage comes from her shock debuff that scales off her attack, we want to maximize that. This is a good thing since you can feed most of the crit relics to a normal DPS and give Kafka the ones with attack and speed. Her best set is the 4-piece Sizzling Thunder. It does everything for Kafka. More lightning damage and more bonus attack. If you haven't farmed a decent 4-piece yet, then go with a mix of Sizzling Thunder and Musketeer. The damage drop-off is not that much. The best ornament set is the Space Station for the exact same reason. More attack. For main stats, you want attack percent on the chest, speed or attack on the boots, and try to aim for 134 speed for the breakpoint. The catch is you do want your dot supports to be a little faster than Kafka, so they can apply the dot first, then Kafka can get bonus damage on her first turn. For the sphere, you want lightning damage and either attack or energy recharge on the rope. Your substat priority is getting 134 speed and 10% effect hit rate, then attack percent. These other substats are weighted fairly equally, so Kafka is pretty flexible to build regarding the secondary substats. And why so little effect hit rate, you ask? Well, the only time she applies a debuff is with her ult, which has 130% base chance with her Ascension 6. Here is the effect hit rate formula. The highest effect resist enemies can have is 40%, so if we solve for effect hit rate, we only need 28.2%. From traces alone, she gets 18%, so we just need to get another 10% from substats. However, this is only for Eidolon 0 Kafka. The funny thing about her E1 is the new bonus damage has a 100% base chance to land, and if we look at the handy dandy chart from my effect hit rate video, We need about 66% effect hit rate to always land the extra proc. But don't worry too much about that breakpoint, it's not that much of a damage loss if your effect hit rate is not that high. And it only affects folks with Eidolon 1 or higher of Kafka. The best light cone, as expected, is her signature, Patience is all you need. And here are the rankings for the other light cones. Now let's explain why they're placed that way. The bonus damage from Good Night Sleep Well is great at high superimpositions, however, at S1, you max out at a 36% bonus damage, which you might not always get since it requires 3 stacks, and that 36% is pretty close to a superimposition 5 Fermata. And since we can buy Fermata from the Forgotten Hall shop, or get it from Lucky Echo of War drops, this free-to-play light cone is much easier to obtain for most folks. Eyes of Prey is also pretty good, but the effect hit rate doesn't help Kafka too much, and if you are using Sampo or Luca, they might want to use Eyes of Prey instead of Fermata, and sharing is caring. Then there's Welt's signature light cone, which adds pretty similar damage when it's at superimposition 1. Well, I want to keep this video short and to the point. We went over Kafka's abilities and some teams to best utilize her kit, as well as the gear to get the most out of her. Good luck to everyone that wants her. She is a great addition to the game and introduces alternate playstyles, and not to mention her charming personality. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, have fun out there, Trailblazer.